I think really now everything's leading up to September 14th. Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga. And, they got a decent little undercard on there too. But, that's really the main course, for September. And then, we got fights coming up in October into December. So, and then, like I mentioned, we don't know. I had put up the video with the WBO ordering the Crawford and Fundora fight. Like I had said with Fundora and Spence, I'll say the same thing with Fundora and Crawford, or Crawford Fundora, until you see, and even that being said, until you see them both face to face, at a press conference, what have you, don't assume either fight is solidified. But I guess we'll find out really in the immediate if there's gonna be a Fundora and Errol Spence fight or not, and if Fundora just drops the WBO belt, doesn't negotiate with Crawford, and then they really do go do that fight with Spence. But we'll see. A lot of it right now in the fall is a timetable thing, because in the I always say this during this time of the year. For a lot of the people who follow me and Guard Your Grill, our UK fans, there's a little thing called the NFL and college football that happens in the fall here, which takes up a lot of the scheduling. So when these promoters, when they make fights, a lot of it's predicated on what the football schedule is. It has everything to do with it. Everything to do with it. So when you consider you have October, right, that you're trying to fit in a Spence Fundora fight, but then November you're trying to do a Tank fight. That's 2 back-to-back pay-per-views, man, and you got to be very wary about how the PBC are kind of doing business now and scheduling and all that. That's why I'm leaving that on the. I'm not solidifying that with Fundora and Spence is gonna happen. Just guaranteed. Let's see. But anyway, man. Let's get into Boots Ennis, man. Look, all of us know Boots is, whether you think he's going to be the guy or not, like, he's obviously on the radar with a lot of us as it concerns the prospect of him, be it a Crawford fight, be it an Errol Spence fight, or whatever the case may be. But he's clearly, at this stage, he's like 30 plus fights in, but it's almost as if, because of just issues he's had managerial, promotion wise, and he's almost having to be fast tracked at this point, because there's fights that, quite honestly, man, had he been managed well, he probably would have been in a couple of years ago, but with boxing, the divisions change, fighters, move up, fighters lose fights, and they get out of contention, and then it really becomes like, all right, well, in this case for Boots, like, who's at welterweight right now? What's a big fight for him if the idea is we're really trying to propel him to like a higher pedestal? And when you look at the welterweight division, man, those days of there being like big marquee fights, they're not there right now. The last one we had was Crawford Spence, and that's literally over a year ago. But when you look at everything now, man, it's like it's depleted for the most part. And that's no disrespect to like Staniotis and now Brian Norman Jr. and all these people, but those aren't fights that, for Boots Ennis, in a win, none of those fights are gonna really put him up there, And I think at this stage, and we've heard about it, we've heard this talk about like a move to 154. Like, if you ask me, I think this should have been done like last year, only because when you look at the division, there's no big fights there for Boots Ennis. At 154, there are world title fights there for him, but there's more appealing fights that I think the general public, not even including the people that are rocking with Boots, like, they'll hop onto those fights. Whether you talk about a Tim Tszyu fight, a Fundora fight, or being in and around where a Jermell Charlo fight, if he decides to come back. There's there's more appealing options at 154. And being that Boots is not a small welterweight, I don't feel 154 is going to be this monstrous move up. But I just think Boots, I think if the longer he stays at welterweight, it's almost like he's stunting his growth, because I just don't think there's a big enough fight there in a win that is going to put Boots really in front of people's faces, like, wow, this is the guy. That's always predicated on the guy you beat, you know? And, you know, Crawford had a difficult time doing that when he got to 147. But the difference with him was we saw at 135 and 140 the kind of guy he was, that by the time he did get to welterweight, that's why people were calling for the Spence fight. It wasn't just, oh, you know, in time. It was like right when he got to welterweight, that was the fight. With Boots, it's like he hasn't had that kind of trek to like, you know, I get people want the Crawford fight, but it's not the same kind of deal, you know, where Boots did all this already and now you're here, and now that makes sense. That's the whole point I'm saying with the fast tracking. I think Boots just needs to, I think he needs to move to 154 and put himself in contention with those guys. And to be honest with you, even with those other fighters that are there, fighting Boots is a big fight for them too, you know? That's why I think it'd be in, again, I'm not his manager, but I really feel it'd be in their best interest to just start that trek, because I think they're kind of just, no disrespect to the fighters, I think they're just wasting their time at welterweight. I really, really do. Because if the idea is you're going to sit there and just get titles, and then you try to become undisputed at welterweight, but like I would, you know, I always feel like undisputed is great, but it all really comes down to like who you're beating and who you're fighting. That's really the end all be all. When you historically look, some of the greatest fighters of all time weren't necessarily undisputed champions. That's really become in the last like several years where like there's been this push for undisputed, and I'm cool with it, but I'm more on the side of just make the good fights. It could be for 3 belts. It don't gotta be for all 4, but sometimes 2 guys could just have 2 belts, but those 2 guys are the undoubted number one and number 2 guys. And that's all we needed. That's all we need to see. So I guess we'll see, man. I mean, I'm hoping that Boots moves up. I did hear a couple things, you know, going around, but I mean, I'm not gonna say anything yet, but there could be a push. There could be a push to 154, and I'd like to see that. I think that puts Boots in better fights. So I guess we'll just have to see. Because as of right now, there's nothing scheduled for him. I mean, there was a report coming around that there was a rematch for him and Carmen to fight again. Like, I don't know if you want to get into that fight again. But outside of that, it's like Brian Norman Jr. There's been that back and forth going on. But like, again, like, I'd like a 154 push, man. I think there's exciting fights up there, and I think in wins up there, it gives him more validity, you know, to him being like that next guy. So let's see. Again, long weekend ahead. I'm sure a lot of y'all are off Monday, so enjoy the weekend. And then we're gonna be really, gearing up for September 14th. Canelo Alvarez, Edgar Berlanga. Now the story comes as to whether we're gonna see the same situation with the UFC, where they had to wait for the main event to finish in order for the, we'll see, man. The UFC's got the Sphere event going on, which, mind you, man, is not a cheap ticket either. But the Canelo Alvarez fight is not a cheap ticket either, man. Like, I was checking the tickets on there, and they're asking for like the cheapest ticket in the nosebleeds. They're asking for like $450, $500, man, for Edgar Berlanga fight, and a $90 pay-per-view. That's just crazy, man. But ultimately, they got to pay Canelo, and this is what it comes down to. That's why the prices are what they are, man. That you got to pay Canelo his guarantee. He's getting the 80% of the proceeds collectively. This is why the price tag is what it is, man. I'm just wondering in a collective, which is the bigger show in Las Vegas that night? The Sphere's been this big deal in Vegas, and now you got the first UFC that's going to be taking place there. There's not a lot of seating. That's why the tickets are like $1,000 a rip, cheapest. But I guess the question comes down to, for the high rollers, what are they going to drop a stack on? The UFC at the Sphere, or Canelo versus a guy a lot of them never even heard of before? So things to consider. So anyway, man, enjoy you guys this weekend. Let me know, should Boots move to 154? I say yes. I think there's better fights up there for him. And in wins, it really puts him up there, you know? So enjoy you guys this weekend. Let me know. Like, subscribe, all that. I'm out.